Robinson tapped it out to knock. Zion rips it, punches it home.
Less than 5 years ago, Zion Williamson's highlights were the most viewed basketball highlights in the world. His absurd athleticism was unprecedented, in a body that made no sense, and it looked like the North Carolina player was going to be the new unicorn to dominate the NBA. However, his path to NBA supremacy has been a roller coaster ride, relegating him to second fiddle in world basketball, even though his performance in the league has been brilliant. This is the story of how Zion has become the forgotten one. The player that no one talks about for the right reasons, but who's capable of changing the course of a whole franchise. Zion was born in Salisbury, North Carolina on July 6, 2000. His love for basketball began when he was just 5 years old. The power forward already dreamed of being a professional basketball star, and by the age of 9, he was up at 5 a.m. to practice. In addition, his family had a special attachment to basketball. His mother was a coach, and Zion played for her during his early formative years on her AAU team. And later he played for his stepfather, who was also a coach, and began training him at the point guard position. Playing this position allowed him to develop his skill set and improve his ball handling attributes that, over time, have been key in making him such a special prospect. But it was with his arrival in high school that Williamson really exploded. Zion attended Spartanburg Day School, where he began to be noticed on the national stage. During his senior year, he averaged a surreal 36.4 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game, making him one of the most sought-after prospects by colleges across the country. He received a 5-star scout grade with a 96 rating, being the best player at his position in all the US. However, he was second in the ESPN 100 rating that year behind only R.J. Barrett and tied with Cam Reddish. That performance led him to be recruited by the prestigious Duke University, where he was able to play under coach Mike Krzyzewski, probably the most prestigious head coach in all of Division I. But more incredibly, Coach K managed to recruit also Barrett and Reddish, potentially creating one of the strongest teams in all of NCAA history. But by that point, Zion was already world famous. His mixtape on Ball is Life with the iconic I Believe I Can Fly track had millions of views, and fans already knew about this basketball phenom. The hype for his arrival in the NBA was further accentuated when he achieved unprecedented averages in the NCAA, with 22.6 points, 8.9 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 2.1 steals, and 1.8 blocks per game, with an incredible 68% shooting percentage from the field. Numbers that consolidated him as the clear favorite to be the #1 pick in the draft in a class loaded with talents like Ja Morant, his Duke teammate R.J. Barrett, and Darius Garland. And just like this season with Wembanyama, that lottery was worth a lot more than usual.
The #1 pick goes to the New Orleans Pelicans.
The New Orleans Pelicans didn't hesitate for a moment about who to select with the first pick. Zion offered a unique opportunity to transform a small market into an absolute powerhouse. His physicality, leadership, and attitude were a unique combination that the power forward had taken advantage of at every level he had played at during his career. But contrary to what often happens, Zion lived up to that enormous hype. But problems staying healthy began to take their toll on the player. The North Carolina native suffered a significant meniscus injury in October 2019, just before making his NBA debut. And seeing the recent history of hyped players like Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, who missed the first full year of their career to ensure a full recovery, many fans thought he would not debut all season. However, Williamson made his ambition clear by wanting to take the court as soon as he was ready. And he did not disappoint. Zion made his pro debut 3 months later on January 22, 2020, in a game against the San Antonio Spurs. He played just 18 minutes due to minutes restriction and finished with 22 points and 7 rebounds, scoring 17 consecutive points in the last 3 minutes of the final quarter. But most promising of all, he hit all 4 of his 3-point attempts in that game, with the long ball being considered the weakest aspect of his skill set. Not only New Orleans fans, but basketball fans in general began to raise expectations for a player who looked like he was going to be even better than the team's former superstar, Anthony Davis. Zion was only able to play in 24 games during his rookie campaign, but in his limited 27 minutes of action, his averages of 22.5 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 2.1 assists on 58% shooting from the field and 43% from three-point range showed that if he could stay healthy, he would be a difference maker in the NBA from the get-go. His impact was comparable to the early performances of King James himself. Williamson's next season was arguably the best of his career. The power forward was finally able to play minutes without medical restrictions, and his output skyrocketed to 27 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game in 33 minutes of play, all while shooting 61% from the field. He became an All-Star Game starter at just 20 years old, and the Pelicans began to show signs of being a competitive team with the core consisting of Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Zion Williamson himself. But all those expectations faded over time. The player suffered a foot injury known as a Jones fracture before the start of the 2021-2022 season. As of mid-October, the timeline for his expected return was set for December. But in mid-December, it was announced that the injury was slow to heal, and he would most likely be out 4 to 6 more weeks, with a possible return to action around the All-Star break. And in a similar case to Ben Simmons, in mid-March, it was announced that Williamson would not play that season. Extremely disappointing news for a team that had been waiting for him all season, and yet still managed to improve on the previous season's record by 5 wins without even having their superstar available for most of the campaign. The doctors in New Orleans tried to reteach Zion to walk in a way that was less damaging to his lower body, and the care was almost seamless in trying to get the superstar back to his best level of play. The franchise had a lot of patience, which was rewarded with early rumors of discontent surrounding the power forward. Many rumors even pointed to Williamson wanting to leave the team because of this dissatisfaction, something that didn't make much sense considering the efforts the Pelicans had made to keep him happy. Not only did Williamson not come to a basement team when he was drafted, but he also had the fruits of the Anthony Davis trade around him, which had strengthened the franchise's present and future significantly. A young core that was additionally joined by CJ McCollum to complete a starting 5 of great talent. This Pelicans team is definitely capable of competing for a good playoff seed. And who knows what their ceiling would be when healthy. The Pelicans managed to avoid these rumors and started the season with big ambitions. Zion was able to play the first game of the season against the Brooklyn Nets, a game in which he had 25 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 steals in a 22-point blowout win for his team. And his season was going well, maintaining averages similar to his pre-injury period. But in January 2023, Zion suffered yet another injury. This time it was to his hamstring, which was supposed to keep him off the court for only a few weeks. But just like the previous season, the timeline for his return was stretched out until it was decided again that he would not play for the rest of the season. With their superstar playing only 29 games, the Pelicans posted a record of 42 wins and 40 losses and lost in the play-in game. Concerns over his weight control have continued to be a problem.
Chuck, you had a visceral reaction to this.
It looked like me and Shaq had a baby.
Over this summer, that curse of off-court problems that has plagued the top 2 players in the class of 2019 came to light.
He is a woman beater, and the NBA needs to know this.
Porn star Moriah Mills started going viral on social media, posting information about her relationship with Zion. She started accusing him of adultery, claiming that the player already had a girlfriend with whom he had a child that she knew nothing about. Later, she even threatened to post a sex tape with the player, which curiously meant the end of his Twitter account. Who knows if this might have been because of a call from Adam Silver. And finally, the player was accused of much more serious crimes related to sexual abuse, claims which the player has not spoken, which have caused basketball fans to not know if these allegations are real or just an attempt by Moriah Mills to get clout in social networks. In addition, trade rumors have not stopped swirling, with some sources claiming that it's the Pelicans themselves who want Zion out of the way this time, if they were able to find another franchise cornerstone in return. The future is uncertain to say the least for a franchise that, at the management level, has managed to put all the pieces together to succeed, and for a player who has managed to take away from his own hype while performing like one of the best players in the world. But fortunately or unfortunately, external factors also influence the history books. Zion not only has to stay healthy, but he also has to figure out his life situation so he can devote himself exclusively to basketball. Because once again, the mindset of NBA players may be more important than the skills to dominate on the court. But if he succeeds, we're not only talking about the return of one of the most promising stars in the league, but we could be talking about the return of a generational player. A unicorn that can stamp his signature in the NBA as very few players have achieved throughout the history of the league.